Hello, everybody. My name is Shruti Kapoor, and I'm a React 18 working group member and a senior software engineer at PayPal. Thank you for coming to my talk, and I will be talking about what React 18 means as an application developer. As a developer wanting to upgrade to React 18, I want to know three major things. What's new in React 18? How can I upgrade to React 18? And if it will be hard to upgrade an existing older app, especially if it's in an enterprise. There will be other talks that will dive deeper into technical topics, but I will be going over the main features from the lens of an application developer. First, let's talk about what's new in React 18. React 18 has some out-of-the-box improvements such as automatic patching and some new capabilities that provide support for suspense on the server, and a few different APIs for application and library developers. We'll look into each of them in detail, but first let's talk about automatic patching. So React has always batch state updates that happen inside event handlers like a handle click function. What this means is that if you set state multiple times during an event handler like here, we've got set is fetching, we've got set error and set form status. React doesn't update it every time a set function is called, but it only updates at the end of the function. So React will only re-render once at the end, and this is better for performance. And thanks to batching, React will only re-render this component once at the end of this event handler. This is really good because it avoids multiple re-renders, and React doesn't have to spend the time doing the same work 3 times. But before React 18, state updates that happen outside of event handlers were not batched. For example, if we have a network request here, like a fetch call, React didn't batch state updates here. So behind the scenes, each time you'd set the state, React would re-render a component. And as you can see, when we set state multiple times, it leads to unnecessary re-renders and thereby slowing down our app. Now with React 18, updates are batched automatically, which means that, for example, in this example of network requests calling a fetch function, instead of 3 re-renders, React batches state updates and only re-renders once at the end, improving performance. So to summarize, automatic batching improves performance automatically by reducing the number of re-renders. It works no matter where you update the state. So for example, in events, in set timeouts, in fetch, async or await functions. React makes sure that it is safe to do automatic batching. So for example, if we have 2 button clicks, it'll never be batched together. But even if you run into some problem, you can opt out of batching for a particular update with the help of FlushSync. So that was automatic patching. As an application developer, you may be interested in support for suspense for server-side rendering. So let's look into that. Now first, let's recall what server rendering is. Server rendering is a technique where you render the HTML output of your React component and send that HTML from the server so that the user has some UI to look at while the JavaScript bundles are loading and before our app becomes interactive. Now, what if most of the app is fast except for one specific component? Maybe this component loads data slowly, maybe it needs to download a lot of JavaScript before it gets interactive. Before React 18, this could have become the bottleneck of the app and increased the time it takes to render the component. One slow component can slow down the entire app. This is because server-side rendering was an all or nothing thing. You couldn't tell React to defer loading of a slow component and couldn't tell React to send HTML for other components. But with React 18, we have support for suspense on the server, which means with the help of suspense, you can wrap a slow part of your application, maybe like a comments component, telling React to delay this loading of this slow component like comments. This can also be used to specify a loading state, so maybe we can show a spinner while comments is loading. So basically in React 18, one slow component doesn't have to pull down the entire render of your entire app. With suspense, you can tell React to send HTML for other components first, along with the HTML for the placeholder, like a loading spinner. And when the slow component, like comments, is ready and has fetched its data, the server render will pop in its HTML in the same stream. This way, the user can see the skeleton of this page as early as possible and see it gradually reveal more content as more pieces of HTML arrive. And remember, all of this happens before any JavaScript or React loads on the page, thereby significantly improving the user experience and user perceived latency. To summarize, server rendering is an important performance optimization for React apps that lets your users see content faster. Now, with Suspense on the server, React 18 further improves the user experience by letting you show critical content first and have the rest of your HTML stream pop in as it becomes available. In React 18, server rendering is also fully integrated with another optimization called code splitting. Previously, it was hard to make server rendering work well with code splitting, but in React 18, they work well out of the box. For a deeper dive into server rendering with Suspense in React 18, watch one of the next talks by Shonday Person. Alright, so we talked about Suspense on the server. Now let's look at some new APIs that are added in React 18 for application and library developers. React 18 adds a few new APIs called concurrent features. They let you improve your application's performance by marking some state updates as non-urgent to keep the browser responsive. Some of them are start transition, use deferred value. I won't dive into all of them, but we'll see a demo of use deferred value later and look at how to upgrade an app to React 18 as well. So React 18 also adds a few new APIs for library developers, but as an application developer, you won't use it very often. One of them is the use ID hook that lets you generate unique IDs for your components. And it can be really helpful for libraries such as design system components that need things like form fields, and they'll often use these IDs for accessibilities. There's also a new use sync external store hook that state management libraries can use to better integrate with React. For deeper dive into these, check out the talk React 18 for external store libraries by Daishi Karo. So we looked at some new APIs for application and library developers. And those were some new features that are added in React 18. Now I want to know, what is the process of upgrading to React 18? The process is fairly straightforward and shouldn't take you more than a few hours. First, you need to upgrade your React and React DOM NPM packages and install the new versions of React. As of this talk, React 18 is in beta, and by the time it is stable, you'll just need to update both packages to 18. Once you've got the updated packages, you'll need to switch your React DOM.render to React DOM.createRoot, and it gives us access to root, which lets us use new features of React 18 and concurrent features. If you are using React DOM.render after updating your NPM packages, your code will still work, but you'll just get a warning in the console like this. And fixing this warning is a one-line code change, which we'll look in the demo. So to upgrade to createRoot and to fix this warning, here's what you need to do. Find the place where you call react-dom.render to render your app. And if you use something like create React app, this code will usually be in your source index file. After you find your react-dom.render, replace it with react-dom.createRoot and render your app with the help of the root. Switching your react-dom.render to react-dom.createRoot should give your app a little bit of performance boost because of automatic patching. It doesn't activate any concurrent behaviors by itself, so this should be a fairly safe and easy change for your app. And that's basically all you need to do to upgrade to React 18. To install React packages, React and React DOM, and upgrade from react-dom.render to react-dom.createRoot. Now let's look at demo of how to do this in practice. Okay, we're going to upgrade this app. I found this app online. It's an open source project. It's a Jira clone, and it's using React and Node. And I think this is a typical enterprise app we may have. There's a server-side component, there's a client-side component. And if you look at the client-side package JSON, it is using some third-party libraries, but it's also using React 16 and React DOM 16. So I think this is a perfect candidate to upgrade to React 18. Let's upgrade this and see if we run into any problems. So I've got this app running locally on my computer, and this is what it looks like. It looks like Jira. There's some items here. So let's say that we've got an item here, upgrade app to React 18, and that's the one we're going to work on today. So I'm going to move into development. And there's also filters at the top here. So if I click on Baby Yoda, I can see all of Baby Yoda's tasks. And I can create an issue just like in Jira. So recall from the presentation that we learned that the first step to upgrading an app to React 18 is to install npm package and to upgrade React to React 18 beta. I've already gone ahead and done that. So if I open React package JSON here, you'll see that my React package is React 18 beta. And that's the one you'll see if you update it today. The next step is to make sure that our app is running fine. So I'm going to open my console here, and I have not done any other changes besides just updating my npm packages. So I'm going to open my console here. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to reload my app now, just to make sure that everything is running. So as I can see, there is some warnings here, but the main warning here is React DOM.render is no longer supported in React 18. Use create root instead. And that's fine. That's expected. This is happening because all we have done so far is update our React packages, and React will just warn you when you upgrade to React 18 that you want to use create root. Let's fix this warning, and we'll see how easy it is to fix this warning in just one line of code. So what I want to do is, next thing is open my index.jsx file. And you're looking for a file where you're using react-dom.render to render your app to a container. So now instead of using react-dom.render, I want to use create root. So I'll create a root by calling create root API. And just like how I did with render, I'm going to pass my container here. Now I can call root to render my app and pass my app here. And that's it. The warning has gone and my app is now on React 18. That's all I need to do to React 18, to upgrade my app to React 18. Let's now make sure that this application is running. So let's move our ticket to in progress. Looks like dragging is working. Make sure we can see Baby Yoda's tasks. I can still see all the tasks. Let's make sure that I can create an issue. Create issue. Cool. Looks like everything is working. And that's basically all you need to do to upgrade your app to React 18. Now let's see if we can use one of the concurrent features that React 18 used to use. We did say that React 18 allows opt-in into concurrent features. So let's see if we can try using a concurrent feature. One of the things you will notice here, I want you to focus on, is these avatar at the top. And you'll see that when I click on avatar, my app re-renders and the items in the list change here. So if I click on this avatar, the items re-render. And if I move on from one avatar to another avatar, the items re-render based on who is selected. Now, another thing I want you to see here is that if I click on an avatar over and over again, there's kind of a visual feedback of clicking an avatar. You'll see that there's like a blue border that shows up whenever I've clicked an avatar. And if I click on it again and again, the app re-renders. And I think this works well on a fast computer. But what happens if I have a slower computer? I'm going to enable throttling on this computer. And let's see what happens. So if I click on this again and again, I'm trying to click on it, but I'm not seeing any feedback. I don't see the UI changing for either the filter, the blue border, or I don't see the app re-rendering as well. Let's look at that again. So I'm clicking on this again and again. We see how my cursor has moved, but the app has kind of stuck. Now if I click on this one, there's like a little bit of lag, you can see that. So let's see if we can use a React 18 concurrent feature to fix that option. I think one of the optimization that kind of comes to mind before even React 18 is React memoization. So let's try first adding React memoization to it. I have a board list here. I'm going to add my React memo to my board lists. So we did add React memoization here, but the thing is, this won't fix our problem because the list does re-render every time a filter is clicked. So let's see if we can use a React 18 feature, use deferred value, to fix this problem. To use deferred value, basically we need to tell React to mark certain data items as a deferred item or an item that is okay to be delayed. So as you can see, there's this filters components here, which is this line of code right here. And then there's a list items here, which is this line of code right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use React 18's use deferred value to give a deferred filters. And the value I'm going to set here for deferring is filters. And I'm going to use this deferred filters and pass it to my list. Now, what I'm telling React is that I want to pass the most updated value to my filters component, but I want to pass a deferred filtered value or a deferred value to my list component. And now what that helps React do is anytime that I click on this filters component, this would move as fast as I'm clicking it, but the list component, which is now being populated with deferred value, will be delayed. So let's go back first into my no throttling mode and ensure that my app is working fine there. So when I click on it, I should be able to go as fast as I am. This is just normal computer. This is my fast computer. So I can see that the blue border appears as fast as I am moving and I'm clicking. Now let's throttle to a slower computer. Let's ensure that our app is working for a slower computer as well. And now, so here what I expect it to do is give me feedback when I'm clicking on it faster. So when I click on it faster, you can see that the blue border still appears. My app does not re-render as fast as I'm clicking, and that's okay because re-rendering the list is a slower process. It's a more expensive process, but I'm still able to see the visual feedback of clicking on the filter again and again. And so that's what React 18 helps you do. It helps you give visual feedback to the user for an urgent update and helps you defer the re-render of components that are not as urgent. Now, one thing you may be thinking of is how about if we use debouncing for the click event, for this filter event? One thing to note is that debouncing happens every time, but use deferred value only happens when there's a slow computer. So if your computer is fast, which we saw when we did not enable throttling, use deferred value would not kick in, but it only kicks in when the computer is slow. And that's why use deferred value can be more useful for situations like this. So to wrap up, we saw how to upgrade our app to React 18 by updating our NPM packages, and we saw how to use a concurrent React 18 feature. Now I want to know if it's hard to upgrade to an existing app. Well, I've tried upgrading a few different apps of different sizes, and I haven't run into any issues. So most apps should work after upgrading to React and switching to Create Root with little or no changes. React 18 introduces concurrent features, but they are opt-in. This means that if you use a library that's not yet compatible with them, you can still upgrade to React 18. Then you can start gradually using concurrent features in the parts of your app that are compatible. There are a few edge cases you might want to watch out for. A common one is strict mode has gotten stricter, which basically means that it runs your effects more often. And if your app starts breaking after upgrading, see if your app is wrapped in strict mode, especially if you're using Create React app. You can try commenting out strict mode and removing strict mode. Then you can later re-add it when you have fixed the underlying issues of your code. Automatic batching should work fine for most apps as well. However, if there's a specific component that expects state updates to be flushed synchronously, you can use an API called FlushSync to disable automatic batching for that update and force the old behavior. Finally, note that if you're using third-party libraries, especially for state management, they may not yet all be compatible with concurrent features. So if you want to use a concurrent feature like use deferred value, you might need to wait for a third-party library to update to support it. Overall, I think I want to repeat that most apps should work after upgrading to React 18 with little or no changes. I think this is really exciting for us because nobody likes to get stuck to an old version or to spend weeks upgrading their code. And with React 18, you should be able to upgrade your application with just 2 lines of code. I think React 18 is an exciting upgrade for application developers, and I hope my talk inspires you to try React 18, and I hope it shows you how this process of upgrading is smooth and gradual. Thank you so much for attending my talk.